Dan is on my bed right now.
We're not both in the bed. Just making that clear.
You're right, I did make this weird.
Yeah, you did.
We're actually recording this with Mr. Frodo right next to us.
Yep, Mr. Frodo made a visit today.
Yeah. Oh, there he is.
And he is, he's just released himself from his cocoon underneath the pile of blankets where he put himself. And now that people are talking, he's going to bug me while we're recording.
Hey, that's fine. I get to look at him this time. I don't just hear him and curse all the sounds that I'm going to have to edit out later.
Right, now you can see all the damage he's doing.
Yeah, but I get to enjoy it.
Yeah, right.
So, just a little, I guess, inside baseball. We're recording this before the last episode has been released. I phrased that weird.
Is this a call forward, a call back? I'm lost.
Well, so what I'm saying is,
when are we?
So we haven't released the last episode yet. This is the one where we discovered our new enemy, Noah.
Yeah.
And
that's true.
also the one where we made the call to arms to get iTunes reviews from our users.
Yes, exactly.
And in the process of doing that, I talked about the podcast that I liked, 2-Bit Geeks, that we kind of made them a little, like our competitive little enemy, I think, in that episode.
Yeah, I mean, didn't really make them an enemy per se, just
we just want to beat them.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so we recorded that on like a Monday or something like that. And the very next morning, I got a really, really nice Twitter direct message from one of them there at 2-Bit Geeks. I believe it was Tom.
Yeah.
And did I send that to you? I don't remember.
Oh, you're talking about the message where they said that we're one of the podcasts that they like listening to.
Yeah, so basically he just sent a really nice, like, encouraging direct message saying that he liked the show and he listened to it. It was just, it was really, really nice. And I was like, obviously I said like, oh, thank you. Like, it was really nice to like hear. But it was weird because we just recorded like a big long segment the night before. And I feel like we were trying to be funny, and I couldn't remember that morning whether we like
we didn't say anything bad about them. All we said was they were really successful, and we were trying to figure out how they did that.
Yeah. Well, and I've edited the podcast since then, and so now I know. But at the time, I was sitting there like, do I need to like warn him that, we talked about you guys, but it was before you sent me anything.
Yeah.
I wasn't positive, and so. I think I typed up multiple responses that included the whole like trying to figure out a way to say like, just so you know, we talked about you guys and we already recorded that, but I also didn't want to like give anything away, so I like stopped myself from doing that, and I was like, no, I'll just let him, I'll let them experience it whenever the episode comes out.
Right.
Because I thought that would be kind of funny or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then we kept talking kind of throughout the week. And actually, he was giving me, I was asking him a couple questions, like technical questions, and he was being very helpful. And either way, nicest person in the world, at least as far as you can get through Twitter. And each time I'm like, should I be saying something? And luckily, I've since edited the podcast and realized that I think we're in the clear on that one. But then this morning, like, I don't know, just a couple hours before we're recording, he sent or tweeted out a picture of him in our A-Town shirt.
Yeah.
And again, I found myself wanting to be like, well, now when this episode comes out, are people going to be like, oh, they're just saying nice things about them as a sort of tit for tat thing? But so, no. This was all unsolicited.
Basically, what you're saying is you're too afraid to face them in person through the internet, obviously, and you would have to do it. You have to do it through a podcast. So, Mr. 2-Bit, this is your update on Charlie's feelings about facing you.
Yes, I
don't care.
I'm too afraid to talk to you directly.
I have no skin in this game because whether we said bad things about you or not, which obviously we didn't, I haven't listened to the podcast, so I have nothing. I have no stake here. No face to save.
I believe I said it in the last episode, and I think we're continually proving it out. I'm a weirdly insecure person.
Yeah. Charlie just tells me to attack something and I'll do it. So I don't have any reference point. If he tells me you guys are bad, you're done for. This is a war, but
I do kind of like the idea. I like the idea of either calling them our like sister podcast or calling them our rival podcast.
I don't know. I think we should let them decide that since
Nope.
they're the one with more power.
No, they should have no. No, that's the idea, right? They can ignore us all they want.
True. In the words of a popular quote from Game of Thrones, power is power. So they're the ones that should be able to decide that, I think.
Okay, so we've decided that 2-Bit Geeks is the official rival podcast of A-Town.
Yeah. So it started here. When people look back,
They
through
wonder where
history,
this started.
yeah, the great split of the continents between A-Town or 2-Bits.
Yes.
It was
The
started
Midwest
here.
geeks versus the New England geeks.
Yes, absolutely. Oh, that's right. They're the ones from New England.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get them mixed up with ones that might be down south from us. So it shows you how much I know.
Okay, well, I'm glad we got that cleared up.
Right.
Of course, in between now and the next episode, and between now and this one getting released, I'm sure there'll be more developments that make all of this very confusing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the goal here.
Let me introduce this world-shaking problem.
All
It'll
right.
probably be done away with in about 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's my question. And I have done so much of not doing any research on this.
So much.
Not.
You've spent an enormous amount of energy not spending energy on this.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's taken a lot out of me.
Yeah.
And so, having done no research on this, I just wanted to pose a question. Do you think that coffee, when you drink it, actually tastes any different coming out of a cup depending on the material it's made out of? So, for instance, I'm completely okay with saying that this is all in my head, but I am interested in knowing, like, does coffee taste different when you drink it out of a glass mug versus a wooden mug or a plastic mug or the now popular tin mug? Because like the tin mug, like I got one of those, like it's kind of like a Yeti mug, and it's great because it'll keep liquid hot like for my whole shift of like 8 hours at work. Or if I put ice in there, like I'll still have ice the next morning. Like it's really good at containing temperature. But I don't like drinking my coffee out of it. And it's because for some reason it tastes terrible. But I'll tell you what I experienced one time. One time I filled this thing up with coffee from Panera that I love. And I took a sip of it at work and I was like, I didn't get something right. The mixture doesn't make sense. This just isn't good. And I tried to take a few more sips throughout my work shift and it just wasn't right. And so like I went home and I was like, I'm just going to drink this out of a mug because I don't want to keep drinking this out of this thing. So I poured it into like a glass mug like I normally would, not thinking anything about it because it was still warm. And it was like exactly like I was sitting in the middle of Panera drinking this cup of coffee out of one of their glass mugs like I normally do. So that little personal anecdote made me think like there has to be something about the material that you're drinking out of, because I will drink the same cup of coffee at Panera, but whenever I leave, I'll grab a cup to go and it's not the same. It just isn't. So this is my moral life conundrum that I deal with. What are your thoughts?
The answer is yes.
Yes, what?
Yes, things taste different depending on what you drink them out of.
Okay,
Obviously.
but here's what I was thinking, though. Obviously, there's no chemical change in the coffee. Nothing
yeah.
has changed.
Well, there's one very important thing that changes. The thing that your mouth is touching
Yeah.
is different.
But why do you mentally perceive it as tasting good or bad depending on what it's
you
in?
can taste it. You can taste your cup.
That's weird, though.
You've never
because I don't have a problem with
metal?
that with food. Like if someone hands me like a pewter,
You've never had that with food?
no, like
So
if
on.
someone gives me like a pewter plate or a wooden plate or a glass plate, and I'm eating like
Dan,
rice off of it. It's not any different.
It's because your mouth isn't touching your plate, is it?
I don't know how you eat, but
But you taste the difference between
I
using a
guess.
metal spoon and a
there's
plastic
a,
spoon,
but
right?
what I'm saying is it's a texture, and that's about it, though.
No, dude, you taste things different when you're using a metal spoon versus a plastic spoon, right? Or fork.
Not in any sort of way that impacts the taste of my food. So, like,
Oh, really? Okay, that's a pretty common thing, though,
well,
right?
well, let me give you an example. I guess then this is news to me. That's what I'm trying to figure out. Because, like, for instance, if I say I get food from Panda Express and it's orange chicken and rice, now my preference would be a metal fork, but that's really only because of the texture of the fork and that it's sturdy.
Okay.
But if someone's like, all we have is plastic forks, or all we have is this wooden spoon, or let's say like because this has happened to me before, like I'm at my work, there's no like utensils around, and so like I have to use like a rubber like ladle out of the drawer to like eat
I
something.
didn't know where that was going.
Yeah. But anyways, and so like these are clearly all different textures of instruments. I have never once thought like,
I mean,
this
now that you're
is
saying
this
it,
now. Like, I never once think like, oh, you only have a plastic fork, now it's not going to be as good. Like, I never think that, but I do when it comes to coffee and tea. Like, I will
you won't use a metal fork for your tea.
right.
No, okay. So now that you say this, like, well, I know lots of people have preferences.
I mean,
on,
are people licking their cup before they down the liquid? I just don't
Yeah,
understand.
your tongue. I mean, like, if you
I'm not
drink out of
going
a cup,
and then drinking my coffee.
whenever you drink, I mean, you don't have a cup on you.
no,
Whenever you drink out of a cup, your mouth is touching the lid.
my
Not the
mouth
lid, but
is,
the
my
lip.
tongue isn't. I'm
Yeah,
not
but-
licking the cup before I drink my coffee.
But those tastes are all, they're all.
But that's
they're-
what
all
I'm
that
saying.
stuff's all
But
up in there.
but then there would have to be a chemical change in the coffee from the glass. Something in that glass would have to be affecting the coffee differently, which makes no sense. So it has to be all
Okay.
in my mind.
You're making me question the chemical reason for it, but there's definitely a difference. is all I'm saying.
I'm getting you to question chemical reason.
I mean, I just thought it was
Obviously, there's not a chemical difference. It's still the same liquid, regardless of what container it's in.
Well, that's not true necessarily.
It's
It
not
probably is true, but
yeah.
like, well, no, like if you drink water out of a plastic bottle, you are getting a little bit of that
hmm
plastic in your water.
Well,
I mean,
true,
not plastic, but
but
something that they coat the plastic
right.
with,
But
or whatever.
when I'm talking about multiple different material cups that I have for a long time that I always put through the washer, like I have wooden cups, I do have
Right.
ceramic, I have
That's the
glass,
right.
I have
But I'm just saying, like, there is particles
yeah.
that could be getting in there from your cup, but probably not. I
My-
always assumed it was the mechanism of your mouth touching the cup.
See, I think it has to do with maybe associations with the. This is gonna be weird, like the width of the lip of the device.
The like the final delivery mechanism of the liquid
Yeah,
to
because
your
you're
mouth.
getting a certain amount in a certain
Mhm.
way.
Like, for example, those thermoses that have the little tiny hole that's like in the middle, not in the middle, but
Yeah,
there's a decent bezel between the edge of the cup and
Yeah.
the actual hole. So like there's this weird, like, the coffee comes out of that hole, has to travel across the lid a little bit before it actually gets in your mouth.
yes.
I never liked those.
No, there's it's like whenever there's like the ketchup water that comes out.
Oh yeah, gosh, that's the worst.
It's part of the ketchup. It's in there. You just didn't shake it first.
Right. You don't want it. You don't want it.
But you're immediately
concentrated.
like, even if that touches your bread, it's like, well, that
All right.
bun's gone.
We're pulling up the Google here because
Yeah.
I need an
Have
answer.
technology.
So
We're
why
not barbarians.
why does liquid taste different in different cups? Why does water taste differently based on cups material? Think you read it. All right, here we go. 2 different reasons. Steel tastes different because metal ions alter the pH of the water slightly.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Plastic
I mean, I don't know
cups-
what any of that means. I just know it means it changes it.
Right. Plastic cups change the taste because when the plastic cups are formed, there's still leftover monomers and short oligomers.
I believe it's monomers.
Oligomers? I think it's oligomers.
I believe it in France. In France, they say monomer.
Yep. Monomer. So there are still leftover monomers and short oligomers, which are in the plastic matrix but not really connected to it. These chemicals slowly leach out. So the traditional plastic taste comes from formaldehyde that leached out of old Backer-like cups. That sounds horrible. So the answer to your question is yes, they taste different because your cups are leaking chemicals into your coffee. And based on the fact that it's altering the pH.
I feel like we just wandered into a dark world that we're not supposed to know about.
Alex Jones is just hiding in that corner over there.
Yeah.
He's just going to pop up and be like...
Just start screaming. He's sweating on us. Deep State wants you to drink coffee out of a piece of crap wooden bowl.
Then you got to sell us your official anti-deep...
Sorry, I'm just mad. Working out. Did about 200 sit-ups. Just testosterone got my mind going crazy. I know that's not a good impression, but still.
I think it's brilliant.
Well, let's steer this ship back on the shore.
So I think we answered your question then.
Yeah, so I was right. There is actually
you were right.
Scientific...
No. You literally started this by saying there's no way that it's actually changing the chemicals in this cup.
I'm thinking of past fights that I've had with other friends where they said that I'm crazy. And they're the ones that got me to come to the conclusion that it was all association-based. But now that this has come out, I feel a little bit vindicated. You people that are listening know who you are, and you're wrong.
Noah.
He's like, I don't know. Coffee tastes the same to me, whether it's in styrofoam, plastic, or glass. I don't care. I'm always licking metal. Doesn't taste any different. You have listed on here iOS 11.
Yeah, so, okay.
Please, for the love of God, tell me we're not doing a full-blown review of iOS 11.
No, okay. Right. So I would love to, and I love talking about operating systems and especially mobile operating systems.
Nerd.
But there are plenty of podcasts that do that immensely better than we ever would.
Yes.
So I was kind of going through and I was like, okay, what about this would Dan care about? And
the light button and the volume button.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah. So there's some changes to the control center that I knew you'd be happy about because that was basically the only thing I ever knew about your opinions on anything where the iOS 10 control center bugged you.
Yeah.
But that's not what we're going to talk about here. What we're going to talk about is ARKit. Are you familiar with ARKit?
Does it have to do with VR?
No, it has to do with AR. Are you familiar with AR?
Maybe. I feel like you've used that term before, and it means VR, but you're going to pretend it's something else.
No, it's totally different.
Okay, what is it?
Okay, so VR is virtual reality.
Right.
AR is augmented reality. The idea being AR is placing things in the real world. Mm-hmm. So usually this is like your phone camera or whatever can see the environment and you can place things in the new environment, right?
Gotcha. So like putting a filter over your Google glasses to like...
Yeah, like Snapchat filters are considered AR.
Gotcha.
Okay, so iOS 11 comes with a new set of APIs for developers to use that makes implementing AR extremely easy and like really, really good. Mm-hmm. And so I downloaded a whole bunch and I just wanted to let you sort of like try a couple of these out and tell us what you think.
All right.
Does that seem okay?
Yeah, I guess. I'm being put on the spot here. I mean, am I supposed to say no? I'm not Noah.
Well, no, we don't have to do this.
We can do it. No, let's
I just thought you might be interested in it.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So,
I just hate this stupid line that we're drawing between VR and AR, but I get it.
Okay, wait a minute. You really don't? This doesn't make sense to you? Why
I get it, but it's still like putting a thing in front of your face that changes something.
I
Anything putting a thing in front of your face that changes it is VR to me.
All right. Well, then we'll call this... No, we won't. It's AR. That's what we're going to call it. Okay. we're gonna get set up here, and we'll be right back. All right, test. Looks like I'm getting sound. Okay. All right, so I downloaded a bunch of these. I tried out most of them. Let's start with this one. I feel like this is the one that you're going to be. Actually, no. We'll start with the IKEA one, just so that you get sort of
Oh God.
No, the idea is just.
Now I'm gonna be walking around IKEA.
No. Okay, so here,
Great.
opening the IKEA app. So if you point it at the ground, it like sort of takes a little. There should be like dots showing up on the floor. There we go. Okay. Wow, it does. It seems like it's really kind of struggling, doesn't it? Oh no, there we go. Now it's working. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can pick a piece of furniture, and because it's IKEA, everything's like to scale. It's like the exact same, dimensions, and you can just like pick a spot. You can use your hands to sort of move it around.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty neat. So that makes sense because so it takes a picture of your like floor plan and then you can pick a piece of furniture and see what it would look like in your room. Which that's kind of the point, and that's kind of genius, especially for a furniture company using this technology. And like when you move it to the back corner of the room, it gets smaller and fits appropriately where it's supposed to, just kind of taking advantage of what it feels like the space is. So it even adjusts the size of the piece of furniture based off where you're putting it in the scope of the room that you've just mapped out.
Right, and you can place it. I think it like drops or something.
Now it's on Frodo. Uh-oh. He's stuck under the chair.
So, yeah, the idea here is you can like do a floor plan and like you could walk around the room and sort of get.
Was that similar to the tech that Pokemon Go was using?
Yeah, that's okay. Pokemon Go is doing AR too. It's just a lot more simplified. And actually they were updating or are going to update to use the new AR kit, which will make it better apparently. So, that's just like the like standard demo for, the use case for this, right?
Yeah.
But this guy, this is an app called ZG Revenant.
Okay. That is a video game.
Indeed. That's why I thought you might be interested in this one. So we're going to scan the ground here.
That's neat. It's like, so basically what it is, it's like an aerial shot. And it's treating the ground like you're on this overview aerial shot of like a base with like walls and other stuff. And your camera, your phone, is like a gun over the top of the aerial shot, and you're like shooting these enemies.
But here's the thing. So like you can get down right next to them, so you can make your shot better.
Oh wow, yeah, that's cool. So you can like zoom in and get closer, like you're flying over. Uh-oh, Frodo just broke into the reality. Get out of my base, Frodo. I think I'm blowing up my own stuff. I probably shouldn't be doing that. Yeah, that's pretty neat.
And like one of the things I noticed when I was playing some of these is I would end up like on the floor to try and like change my angle. Like I was just doing it to sort of play around with these as a demo, and most of these I found myself really getting into, and I at least thought they were really cool.
That actually is really neat. I'm glad you showed me that because I didn't realize what you meant by that. If you could have just said like Pokemon Go, and I would have immediately gotten what you were talking about. I never play Pokemon Go, by the way. I'm not a Pokebro, but I do get what it is. So.
Pokebro?
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna call it.
All right, I'll just show you one more because you don't seem super interested in this. Okay, so this guy here, I'm just gonna hand it to you again. You can do this one with one hand.
All right. So what is this?
This is like a painting app. So if you touch the screen, you're going to paint in the 3D space that your phone is.
Yeah, so it stays where it's at. So I can just draw all around the room and it'll stay. That's neat. I would imagine, so could you like save a picture of what you're doing?
Well, so you can take a screenshot, but everything's in like 3D space.
Right, that's what I was meaning. Like, would it like save it as like one of those 360 images, like on Facebook or something?
Well, so I don't think so, because the idea here is that it's in 3D space, not like you're in a single point and you're looking around in 3D, but rather that you can move around in 3D. So like move the phone around while you're holding it.
Yeah, and it just kind of like throws a line around as I'm like spinning around, and I change colors as well.
And then if you like just like back up across the room, you can see your thing from really far away.
Oh yeah, okay. It like keeps track of the perspective, and yeah, that's neat. I like that, like the dimensions.
Yeah, like I was playing this with my son earlier. and like we kind of drew a big like 3D airplane in the middle of like the living room, and then you could like move all over the living room. And Dan right now is he's drawing all sorts of circles around Frodo standing on my bed.
He's in a ball now.
Are you capturing him in a are you drawing a Pokeball?
Yeah, sure.
I think I finally found the one that Dan's sort of into here, but he's forgetting to talk.
Sorry, I just was trying to look at like the dimensions because it like keeps track of where it was and which way you turned in the room and stuff. It's pretty neat.
Oh, right. And so this app, which I'll get the name here in a second once we leave, it saves these to like sort of a global space. So like this drawing that you made, the idea is
it'll be there that you can like pop it up and like look at it if you ever need to reference it again when you're in the room.
Well, not just you're like saving it to their sort of global like world. So like if you were in a park, you could draw a message and then somebody else could go to that park and see the message where you drew it.
But things could get very cluttered too, couldn't they?
Yeah, I have to imagine there's not actually that many people using these.
So maybe this is a way to get like graffiti artists off the streets and just have them put all their vulgar stuff.
Yeah, I imagine this would get maybe dangerous really quickly, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Like inappropriate messages or meet me here at this date, that sort of stuff.
So this one is called World Brush.
The video game one was cool. Like that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's kind of like a tower defense kind of thing. There's these like zombies kind of coming after your base, and you have to sort of protect it from this aerial helicopter, but that helicopter is just your phone.
Yeah, I always thought when Pokemon Go came out, there's like a lot of cool stuff they could utilize that. That was actually genius because that seems like the most straightforward one that you could use, like with their premise. But yeah, it'll be interesting, like both with VR and like this sort of stuff. I'm interested in seeing like what they do with it in the future.
Yeah, so that was AR in iOS 11. Which I'm pretty excited about. I think lots of people are going to, like, because it's so easy for developers to add this into their apps. Like, the day that iOS 11 came out, because I've been on the beta for a long time, so I actually had iOS 11 already, but a lot of the developers hadn't, well, I don't think anybody could update their apps until the actual public version dropped. And the day that it dropped, my weather app, I use Carrot. I don't know if you're familiar with that one.
Not particularly.
It's pretty good. It had updated itself with a VR mode. And actually, I'll just show you really quick. It was one of those, like, there's no reason, like, nobody's going to download this app because this is here. It was kind of this, like, weird, delightful little thing. So if I say AR mode, you have to do the same little floor scanning thing.
Yeah.
And then I can drop. So the premise of this app is that there's this like AI inside of the app that sort of says funny things when it's telling you the weather.
Oh yeah.
But this little AI bot thing drops in, and like you can see, you can look at like the weather in 3D space for some reason. There's zero utility for doing this.
Yeah, they're literally just like throwing a new technology, like trying to utilize a new thing in some way.
Right, but the idea here is because Apple did all the legwork, all the hard math to do this.
Mm-hmm.
For developers, it was really easy for them to just be like, oh, we'll just add this in kind of for fun.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a big deal, which means people trying to do something a little more interesting don't have to do all the legwork for getting VR right.
Right.
They can spend their time making the like experience itself interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of like that game we were seeing.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I'll be like, I'm not just sorry. I seem tired,
No,
and I am. But
well, and this
like,
is weird because we're like standing and looking at each other. And
no, like
around.
I'm not trying to like sound lethargic. I actually do think it sounds really interesting. Yeah, like I said, I do want to see what they do with it in the future because it's always cool when a new technology like that comes out to see like how people utilize it in interesting ways that you didn't think of,
right?
Or what sort of new entertainment platforms come out of this potentially that we didn't realize existed.
Yeah, there's ones I've seen that like throw a virtual TV on your wall and, little things like that. And supposedly the rumor is that Apple is coming out with their own like glasses, kind of like Google Daydream or Google Cardboard, but that the glasses that they come out with will leave the hole open for the camera, and so you can have the thing on your face that points into your room and like puts stuff in your environment, and so this is sort of that first step towards that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see, what goes on with this.
It's just interesting that like in old movies, you always see like people think the future technology will be holograms coming out of your watch or something like that. Whereas when you see stuff like this, it just makes more sense. Like, why would you ever do that when you can just like do something like AR and look through a screen and see that same thing? Or you
Well,
get
it
what
would
I'm
be a lot
saying?
easier if you didn't have to look through a screen.
Yeah, but I don't know. Like, it seems like that makes more sense than let's do this really hard thing that really doesn't make any sense of making a hologram. Like, it seems like that's way too complicated.
It's
to
a
have
harder
crack.
problem to solve.
It's
That's
like,
for sure.
Well, I'll say this: it's kind of like the flying car. Like,
yeah,
it's a great idea as far as like, what do you think the future will be like? But when you actually break it down into practicality, it's like, well, why would we do that when we could just do automated stuff that works more efficiently?
right.
There could be a day where we need to go towards the skies, but it seems like a really impractical thing to work on.
Right. Yeah, people are already dangerous enough driving cars in 2D. Let's not give them a third dimension to crash.
Right.
So yeah, the reason we're recording this a little early is, well, it's kind of twofold. So one was I kind of wanted to get a little bit ahead of schedule because I'm going to be out of town. So, we're kind of bundling up our recordings here so that while I'm out of town, we can have one that just kind of is ready to go.
Yeah.
But the other one is because you were coming over to hang out, and we wanted to. We're both kind of, I'd say, a little excited about the new Blade Runner coming out.
Yeah. So we wanted to kind of, I guess, we wanted to watch the original Blade Runner kind of as a lead up because there's kind of a story behind that, which I'll share or you can.
Yeah.
Okay. So basically, when we were in high school, probably about freshman year, I want to say. So this was for us, just to give you perspective, which is horrifying that I just realized this about 13 years ago.
Whew.
We're getting there anyways.
Was that? No.
Freshman year. This year,
My freshman year was 2005.
Next summer will be 10 years graduated.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So freshman year would have been 13 years ago. Well, so right now 12. But nonetheless, more than a decade, which is weird thinking about. That's a whole nother thing I can get off on, but yeah, I won't delve into that. But anyway, so we had a Sunday school teacher that kept insisting that Blade Runner was like the most amazing movie ever. And we were, kind of into sci-fi fantasy stuff.
And to be fair, this is backed up by like almost all sci-fi culture.
Yes, absolutely. It is considered a classic for a reason. So we had never seen it before. So we went over there and we watched it one time. And I don't remember anything after the fact up until we watched it tonight. Like, I didn't remember much of the movie. I just remember the experience, like being very bored and not really remembering anything except like a blonde-haired guy shirtless that looked like Sting from Dune, like running around screaming at the end of it, and Harrison Ford like shooting. Like that's all I really remembered.
The like sweaty underwear guy acting like an animal is something that kind of sticks with you.
Right. And so
I'd say the color blue.
Yeah. And so now that we're older and appreciate different movies than we did back then, like there's certainly movies I liked back then that I don't now, and vice versa. We figured, well, the new one looks impressive. We like science fiction. It looked, the preview did the job of reeling us in. So we decided, well, we should probably just rewatch that first one and talk about it, because maybe, I don't know if it's appreciated over time or not, or if we think about it differently because we're in a different spot in our lives. And so we just got done, fresh off the TV, just got done rewatching Blade Runner. So did you want to dive into thoughts, or did you have something else to say before we do that?
No, we can go ahead. We can go ahead and go in. Obviously, this is gonna get us right into spoiler territory.
Right.
Both
the
I
book,
guess all of the different cuts, even though we watched only the final cut.
What we watched was the final cut. So there's about 3 or 4 different cuts, and I don't remember the movie because, like I said, we just watched it again for the first time tonight, having not remembered much. But I remember there's certain things that are implicated in other versions that people have referred to, which we'll get into that. But yeah, just so everybody knows, this is a spoiler zone for all the cuts of the original movie Blade Runner and the novel by Philip K. Dick,
Yeah,
which
which
is
you've read, right?
I have read,
Okay.
and you have not, right?
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
So
And we haven't really talked about while we were watching the movie. You started to explain it, and
yeah,
then
and
we
you just
kind of
told me to stop.
decided.
Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of
there's
decided. Well, I wanted to watch it through the lens of
not knowing anything.
not having those explanations.
Yeah. So I guess I'll start then. So my overall thoughts of the movie was I liked it. Mainly I liked the imagery and stuff like that, but I think part of my liking it did have to do with the fact that I knew what was going on based off the book, because there were large sections of the book that had that weren't in this movie, or things that were in this movie that weren't in the book, but for the most part it by and large followed the plot. So I wasn't in the position of having to figure out what was going on because I had read the book this past year. So my experience may be different, but I actually overall liked it. I actually liked it better than I had remembered, so I think that particular thought that it might have changed and appreciated over time worked for me. But there were some things that I thought were bizarre in it, like I'm almost willing to give it a pass because when it was made, but there are some things where the transitions are weird or awkward, or there's some bits of dialogue that they do make sense, but you really have to, but they're really like stilted and awkwardly placed, so you have to like think about it for a second. And not necessarily in a positive way, meaning like it's not like, oh, this is a thinker. It's more like, why did they say that like that sort of thing?
Right.
And so I'm willing to admit it's not a perfect film, but I'm also kind of looking at it through, I knew what the plot was, and for when it was made, there was a lot of things, whether just visually, the movie production itself and all the sets and stuff that they built, or just technologies that they thought would be somewhat futuristic while kind of keeping it grounded, I thought was really impressive and interesting. So I liked it.
Yeah, and so I would say my general impression was the same as watching it in high school, which is like I can appreciate what it did, and like
Right.
what how well it kind of stood up for its time and everything.
Yeah, because like we were talking during the movie, like there was just a particular scene, not anything crazy going on, but it's just like this particular scene looks like it could be in a movie from not too long ago.
Yeah. I think it also really helped watching it on, a 55-inch HD TV
True.
versus like we were probably watching it on a,
Yeah.
40 or 20-inch
True,
CRT.
but I
back
still
then.
think like when I'm watching Star Wars, the original trilogy, even the done up versions, I still feel like I'm watching a movie from the 70s though. Like I don't feel like
more than this one.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
See, like obviously there's elements of the soundtrack and stuff like that that's 80s.
Right.
I'm talking about like the way they pan the camera around this scene, and
Gotcha.
yeah, it wasn't HD. Like it was like, yeah, the proximity of the camera to the people's faces. This looks like a scene that could have been filmed in a modern day. That's all. It's sort of like
had a modern.
yeah, like I've
feel
used
to
this
it.
example before. Like Saving Private Ryan is a movie that I really do think that if it never existed, no one knew it existed, but it was still made exactly as is, and it was just put in a can for 15 years, and then Steven Spielberg was like, hey, I got this thing sitting around called Saving Private Ryan, I'm going to release it today. I really don't think anyone could tell the difference. Like
Except
I think
for that weird morph thing at the end.
the morph thing. Oh yeah,
that horrible.
Yeah, the CGI like changed from young to old. True, but by and large, you understand my point. Like
yeah.
like the cinematography in that movie could absolutely be released today, and no one could tell the difference. And that was a movie made in like what was it, late 90s?
Yeah, it was in the 90s. I think
I'm just
90s.
saying there's some movies that how they film, or I don't know the technical terms, like plan a scene or something like that. It feels like this is something that, and obviously the whole movie wasn't like that. I was just saying there was a couple things in it where it was like, wow, that looks very like modern.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
all.
And like this sort of, which is sort of weird to say because there was big giant sets and everything, but sort of the
Yeah.
subtlety of everything.
Yeah.
I think helps that a lot.
Yeah.
Like a Star Wars or Star Trek or, you know, some of these other big sci-fi movies from that era had a lot more happening.
Yeah.
And on this one, it was like he didn't seem to mind at all. Just letting a scene sort of take its time, and nothing had to be moving fast, and you know, so there was a lot happening technically on screen in terms of effects,
Mhm.
but like, although that could make it almost worse because that makes everything, you have to look at it. You know,
Yeah.
you can get away with a little more when you're moving the camera around.
Right.
So either way, visuals are definitely just insanely impressive.
Right.
I feel like there was.
Even the robots, the creepy little kid robots.
Oh my gosh. Well, that had nothing to do with the effects. That was just the design.
Yeah.
Yeah, can we talk about that? What in the world?
Yeah. So
Like,
there
that's
w-
going to sit with me.
yeah, so
for a
there was
while.
creepy little robots that one of the characters had in the movie. It's the character, I don't remember what his name is in the movie because they changed it, but in the book his name is like Isidore or something like that. And for some reason they changed it in the movie. He essentially plays the same role. He's sort of a dim-witted person that first is one of the escaped robots, the female one, like is living, like in the book she's like living in this empty apartment building, and he's been living there by himself for just years and years and very lonely, and didn't realize someone else was there, hears a noise, goes next door, befriends her. Like, but in this movie it's a little different, but
He, like, finds
essentially
her in the garbage.
yeah, essentially same thing
Yeah,
happens.
yeah.
They get together. And so then Batty, the other like main robot that I guess is kind of an item,
His name
with
was Batty?
Roy Batty is what they
Like
were saying. I thought it was
B-A-D-Y?
Beatty, but it's spelled B-A-T-T-Y,
Oh.
and I think someone pronounced it that way
I
in the
think
film.
you said that while we were watching the movie, and I
Yeah.
thought you were saying it like he's the baddie. Like,
No,
you know,
no,
the way
no.
you refer to a bad
Yeah,
guy.
it's either Beatty or Batty. I think Beatty sounds better, but I've heard it said Batty several times, so I think that's what it actually is.
Okay.
But anyways, so yeah, those last stand robots in the book, I think there was actually 3 but it's little details
And
that
this one had 4.
yeah, no, it was, well, no, I mean like it was 3 that were left that were in that
okay.
apartment. But little details like that are minor.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
anyways, so yeah, that character in the movie had like all these like creepy like children robots and weird things,
Yeah.
like some creepy looking guy that looked like he was being held hostage, but it was just a robot that was skitzing out that he was working on. At first it was confusing because I didn't even know what the purpose of all that was. And then I put together the rationalization was like he's some sort of like mechanic for the company.
Yeah.
And so he like takes this stuff home and he's lonely, so he like works on this stuff in his
Right.
free time. So but it was still just like the imagery in the movie was, the word I used earlier was grotesque. Like I think that's a good description of it. It's
Yeah,
like
I mean,
very
it was like there was mannequins everywhere, and some of the mannequins moved.
oh,
And
yeah.
some of them moved in a way that made them seem like they were being held hostage and they didn't want to be there.
Yeah.
Ugh.
So it definitely had an aesthetic that was very like grimy and dark.
Yeah,
and
which sort of fits
gross.
the alien thing, right?
Yes.
So that makes sense. And in that one, I guess in both, it does make sense why that's the aesthetic.
Yeah.
It's sort of this, it's both a lived in world, but instead of it being like a dusty Western, it's more like
Yeah.
a grimy, filthy film noir, which I guess is the
Right.
style.
Which
yeah.
I will say, through the movie, you made some comments, which I agree with, it could be a criticism, is in the book, there's a reason that in context that describes why the world is like this. Why are you in the future and everything just a little better and a little different than it is now, like technologically speaking? I mean, obviously there seems to be some advances, but it's pretty down and grounded to how we live today
Yeah.
with some
Well,
advancements.
Yeah, it was interesting. The year was
Yeah.
actually 2019.
Yeah.
So we're almost there.
Yeah, I think the year might have been different in the book, but yeah, they may have just updated it for that.
Yeah, and that wasn't really a criticism. Actually, I think my wife was the one who kept pointing out the like they'd have some super advanced thing, but then it was on a like CRT.
Yeah. Which again, like I was saying, in the context of the book, there may be some rationalization built into the world for why but it didn't really delve deep, I feel.
I think that's just the way. That's just the
Yeah.
way that things work. Like the context is still going to be built upon the world
Yes.
that the movie was that the year
Right,
that the movie
because-
was made in. Like
yeah,
that's all you have to base things
Because
on.
I had mentioned there was like a face-to-face like screen like phoning system type thing where you're talking to someone on a
Right.
screen, but of course it was like a specialized booth because like back then they had phone booths.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny to see like future technology predictions in movies, but
Yeah.
they're always grounded in the current. Like
Yeah.
everything that we do right now, or a lot of times in movies right now, like the future technology stuff is sort of built around the phone.
Right.
And in like 20 or 30 years, it might be like, oh, they're still using a little tablet device thing instead of it just being implanted in your, fingernails or
Right.
whatever it is that will be happening then.
I
It's
will
always
s-
interesting.
I will say though, its vision of future technology for when it was made was relatively good.
Yeah,
Like
I think so.
like I would put that in the category as far as like predicting future technologies or how things might be. Like movies like that, Minority Report, I think got a lot really right, especially now. Like
Yeah,
when-
I think Minority Report probably got a lot more of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Than because like
it
this
has
one,
the benefit
it's not
of being
that
closer to us in time as well, but
that's true.
it definitely was advanced. Like I always think of the scene where Tom Cruise is running through like I guess an airport or some sort of public area and all of the walls are LEDs and of course a thing pops up recognizing his face and trying to
Yeah.
sell him something, which is like very eerily similar to like stuff we're getting into right now on our cell phones, and like Facebook
Right.
recognizes your pictures when you upload them
And potentially billboard, like the little signs at the malls
yes,
and stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this one wasn't doing the sort of Jetsons, this is what we think the
No.
future is going to look like. It was more in like the Alien style where it's like, this is just a future world that we're in. This is
Yeah.
how the thing is. And like, it didn't even bother me really that they didn't try to explain why the world
Yeah.
was the way it was. Like you said that they had explained that in the book,
Well-
and I'm kind of curious what that was, but I didn't find watching it. I was just like,
Yeah.
oh, this is cool. This feels real.
Yeah, that's interesting to know because, like I said, like I was okay with it. I didn't know if anybody else would be because of that, because it wasn't explained. But I also happen to know the explanation. So in the
Right.
book, essentially what it is, and book readers that are big fans of it, I apologize if I get a detail here or there wrong. I'm just vaguely remembering off something that I read like months and months ago. So, but basically the situation is like there's some sort of war, as in most of these cases, where I want to say it caused a lot of natural issues. There's a lot of
This
talk.
isn't the war with the replicants that they
No.
reference at the
No,
beginning.
it's just
Okay.
it's just a war with humanity, and it destroyed a lot of nature or something like that, and so a lot of mass immigrations happened to off-world, to like different colonies in space. And part of the promise of immigrating was you would have like personal robots, and so of course robots became an industry.
Right.
And then and so that's essentially what it is. And so like a lot of times like there's even a couple spots in this movie where it's evident that this is what they have in mind, but there's like large skyscrapers and sections of cities that are just empty.
Yeah. Well, that was so that guy that she the super creepy guy.
Yeah,
That was what he
even-
was saying. He's like, oh, there's no shortage of free space to live in anymore.
Right. Yeah, and so it was as I will say one thing I don't think the movie did well, like well, before I get into it, what do you think the purpose of the movie was? That'll be more interesting
The
because
purpose of the movie.
right. Well, what do you think? What sorts of themes or points was it trying to make?
I mean,
Because I was going to get
In a
into it. I
s-
just was interested in your take first. Before
yeah.
I
So
dove
in a sort of like not super interesting or well explored way, it felt like there was a little bit of the like, is killing robots just because they're robots okay? But they didn't really explore that. It's just that whenever he would shoot one, he sort of felt bad. But then it didn't seem like he felt bad killing the last two.
I think the clincher in the movie version is, which I was reading a little bit about it before we came down here to record, just on Wikipedia. Like apparently that guy before he dies, that speech is apparently like a famous speech, and it's called like the Tears in the Rain soliloquy or something like that.
Nice.
Yeah. And so like I reread it, and I guess the point is sort of like, at least in his statements, is like he's seen all of this stuff, and because of how we act towards them, like it's now just gone forever. Like he says something about like, I've seen things that no one could ever think of, and now it dies with me.
Kind of like, don't it always seem to go? You don't know what you got till it's gone.
Right.
Paved paradise.
Sure.
You put up a parking lot.
But yeah, exactly. So
I'm just gonna keep going.
Right. And so like I think like the point of it was playing with the like I don't know if Turing test is the right word, but maybe it touches on it a little bit. Like, what's the difference between humans and robots? Because, like, yeah, you're right. Like, I do think, though, it was a deliberate choice for the movie to not explain things and purposely show it and just leave it there. Because, I don't know, because, like, you see him, like, he kills that one robot girl in the middle of the movie. And yeah, like you said, it just shows him feeling bad about it. But it was also kind of an intense scene in a way, or at least it's not to us now because we've seen so much stuff like this.
Scene. It was like
that's
he's chasing the girl, and then he shoots her, and then it gets weird slow motion while you see like squibs going off on her.
Sure, but
and then
you
the music
understand,
was like boom, boom.
You understand,
boom,
but
boom.
part of this is because like we're so much like we've seen so much stuff like this since this movie. And, like, I could see it back then being people having a different because it does seem like most people that defend this movie so tough is, like, typically older people. It's older generations that grew up with it. Yeah.
I'm not, this isn't a condemnation in the whole movie, but you have to admit that scene was pretty cheesy.
In a way, yeah. I didn't really have a problem with it, but I guess you did. But I guess my point is like, I could see that they were playing with some themes now, like that. But I will say the book, what made it much more interesting is in addition to having a more filled out world, there were plot devices in the book that were not present in the movie at all that made those themes more interesting. So, like, for instance, one thing that's in the book is there's a bigger emphasis on nature, like humans kind of messing up nature, which is causing a lot of these problems, and like comparing it to like the situation with him, like his story with like hunting down these robots. So a lot of it has to do with nature and empathy. So like his struggle with the robots is more clear because it's about like, well, if he's able to empathize with them, like why is he killing these things just because they need to be retired?
Right.
And one thing, another thing that they add that's completely absent from the movie that I think was really important was there's this religion within the book called Mercerism. And it's like this techno religion that's been created by the government. And there's all these facets to it where there's like basically this drug machine for all intents and purposes that everybody takes during the day that programs how they'll treat their moods throughout the rest of the day. So it'll make them happy or keep them calm because the world, all the people left behind on the world are depressed. It's dismal and awful. Most of nature has died out.
So this is like Equilibrium?
Not quite that intense. It's not quite that fascistic. It's more of a coping mechanism as portrayed in the book.
So it's just a government issued like upper.
But one of the reasons they created this religion in the book and a central plot of the robots in the book is the religion is clearly false. One of the robots' main goals is to expose this religion to the humans on Earth as false.
What do you mean it's false?
Like it's something that was created by the government to just help people cope. And so one of the reasons why it's inserted into the story is to show that humans are contradictory. Like they're killing robots for being these false things, but they themselves willingly open up to something that's completely false.
Okay.
But what's interesting about it is the author, the story in the book is admittedly more weird. He actually has some supernatural elements, but there's there could be a point to it. Now, this is something where people may differ on interpretation, but like one of the things that he does in the book is like Deckard, which is the guy hunting down these robots.
Right. Harrison Ford.
Yeah, near the end of the book, he starts having actual supernatural visions of this like hero that's in the Mercer simulation, which is like a VR type thing that the religion is based in. And they are really these supernatural things that give him clues to like help him like battle these robots that are in this apartment complex, similar to the end of the movie. And one of the interpretations you can take from that is that this is also, not only is it hypocritical of humanity to act like this towards this fake religion, but it's something that is fake that has given someone a purpose or meaning. And it's the same with, it's like muddying the waters, like what's the line between robotics and humans, because robots are also something perceived as fake that could legitimately have a purpose in a living.
Consciousness or whatever.
Yeah. And one of the very last things that happens in the novel is there's a whole theme throughout the novel that because nature has died out a lot, everyone on Earth, they have animals, and it's seen as like a status symbol. So if you're poor, you can only afford certain types of animals.
Yeah, and they kind of they like briefly mentioned that whenever he went to the place.
Yeah, they hint at it, but they never really.
Well, so whenever he went to the guy who like runs the robot company's place, he's like, "Do you like our owl?" And Harrison Ford was like, "Oh yeah, that must be really expensive."
Yeah, in the book, it's like the main thing. Like he's retiring, he's taking this last job so that he can get money to buy a real animal, because what they have at their house is an electric sheep, and they're like embarrassed to like tell anybody that it's not real, but it's like broken down and they can't fix it. And so
the main thrust of the novel is him trying to get a real sheep.
Well, sure, but it's also a metaphor because like
I would imagine.
Yeah. So like for the end of like one of the last things that happens in the novel, because there's this line running through it about like these animals and all this sort of stuff, is it ends with like he kills these robots. He goes on a mopey like trip out into this like desert area to like think about everything that's happened, like self-reflecting, and he finds a toad on the ground, and he's like, holy cow, like these things should like be non-existent. This is insane. And he takes it back to his apartment, and then it's like this really like depressing ending where he finds out, oh, this is actually just not real at all.
It's like a robot toad.
Yeah. And so it ends with him considering this, and he says like, I think I'd like to know though. I mean, this makes me unhappy now. It's dashed my hopes, but I like knowing. But it's kind of an ambivalent ending. Like it's meant to be
like, meaning like I'd rather live happily in ignorance than sad in the truth.
Except he's saying, I think I'd rather know.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But yeah, and so, but it is this sort of like, I don't know, because Philip K. Dick is a very like intelligent person, so maybe I'm misinterpreting, and like tons of book readers are like screaming at me right now saying that wasn't the point of that. But I feel like the point of the ending was kind of be ambivalent and to be like kind of a question to the reader, like, is this something like is this something that you're comfortable with? Like, is this
right?
Yeah. And so like the book did a much better job than maybe even I'm explaining that it did, of like putting forth a lot, but you get what I'm saying. There's a lot of like devices in it, where this was just like emulating, like it was like an interpretation of that in like a film noir style.
Yeah, this whole movie I think was a lot more about ambience and feel than it was about any specific plot points or characters or themes.
Yeah.
Like, not that those didn't exist, but the thing that this movie seemed to put most of its energy into, and the thing I think it succeeded the most at, was creating an atmosphere that felt extraordinarily real and gave you a very specific feeling.
Yeah, I was going to say what I think overall the movie is not necessarily like, for those people that find substance in it, that's great. Like, I do think there's some there. I'm not saying it's empty and void for what I'm about to say, but I think ultimately what it is it's a very good like spectacle of a certain kind. Like that is what makes it interesting. And so if you don't find anything interesting beyond the spectacle aspect of it, I really don't think there's much there for you, because it is hard to get if it's not your thing. If you're
Right.
not into that style, the noir stuff, the lack of detail, and the sort of like cold, distant feeling you get to everything that's going on, then it's not for you.
Yeah, and I know that this is not one of those like universally loved movies. It's kind of fraught with tension, it feels like, in the sort of nerd community.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I think everybody kind of blames a different party for why they don't like a certain version of it. And, there's all the drama around the different cuts and all this stuff.
Gotcha.
But I just say that to say, like, I don't want to say that there's not much there, because there could be.
Mhm.
It's like, for me personally, I'm not a huge fan of the sort of, you were calling it grotesque, and maybe that is
Yeah.
the right word. Actually, while we were watching it, you compared it to like a Tim Burton movie, and
No.
I felt like that was the best.
Well, yeah.
comparison.
I actually think, which I know you haven't, I don't think you've seen a bunch of his movies, and I've only seen one, but Dave Lynch's Dune from the 80s.
Right.
Like a lot of people actually are like, there's like a weird cult around that director from that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like he was
you've
known.
Never seen Twin Peaks?
No, I
I
haven't.
haven't either, actually.
Not yet. I plan on it, but not yet. But like he was known for being like everything. Like, for instance, apparently whenever he would make evil characters, he would visually go to like the extreme, and
Yeah.
that was his interpretation of things. And he did it on purpose. So it wasn't like he was simple-minded. It was just like, okay, we're going to have these evil family members in the Dune books. They're going to be really grotesque. So like in the movie, like one of the big fat characters from the book that like floats around, he decided to add in addition like this ugliness outwardly. So like he had boils and like pus and like
Right.
all this stuff. And so like he would add all these like grotesque elements, and his movies like have that aesthetic like thoroughly permeated through them. And that
I don't
felt
wanna, I don't want to say that that's bad. It's that for
It's
me
just different.
personally, it almost like pulls, kind of like what we were talking about when we were talking about scary movies.
horror movies, yeah.
It pulls me out, like it makes me uncomfortable to the point of pushing me out of my like
Yeah,
suspension of belief that I exist at.
gotcha.
And it's not that this movie was incredibly grotesque
No,
by any
no.
means, but it has that like the what's Batty.
Yeah, yeah.
He was like sweat, like dripping with sweat in every single scene that he was in.
Yeah.
And it was like, that is the type of thing that it like bothers me so much for some reason.
Yeah.
It's honestly,
And they were like long, drawn out, not nice looking, like I'm gonna kiss you now scenes. And
yes, lots of like kissing with preemptive tongue action.
that was weird and awkward.
Yeah, it was just uncomfortable.
Like I'm still not sure why he kissed the guy in the tower before he killed him. Yeah, that didn't make any sense. I mean, the only thing I could think of was just what I told you, was like I thought maybe there was a subtext of like that guy and him were there for like some sort of like sexual encounter, but which maybe we missed the key piece of dialogue that said that. But I thought I was getting a vibe from that personally, but that was the only thing I could think of. Or maybe it was like representative, like something stupid, like, oh, he's kissing his maker or something stupid like that.
Right.
But,
Well, he did say something like,
yeah,
it's strange to meet the maker,
yeah,
or meet my maker. I don't remember how he
dad.
said it.
I think he used the word father or
Yeah,
something.
Daddy.
Yeah. Hey, Dad.
Hey, Papa.
Papa.
See, I like this. I can
Yeah.
see your face as you get a joke
Right.
ready to go. You know,
Yeah.
it just adds to it.
Yeah.
Maybe we should start releasing these whenever we release them on YouTube. We should have a feed of your face.
No, we're not doing that.
I don't know.
This is not.
Can
a
we set that
visual
as
medium.
a Patreon goal?
We can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How much monthly Patreon money would it take for us to have all of our episodes include a feed of your face?
If we could get $150 a month on Patreon.
$150, that's like pseudo possible. Do you want to put a date on that? Like a by this date?
By February.
Okay. That seems less possible. All right, you heard it here, folks. If by February 2018, if our Patreon has $150 a month, we will include for how long? Wait a minute. This is starting to sound like work for me now.
I don't know. We're making a lot of promises that we need to start writing down. It's like something about like the 1,000th like on our Facebook page, they get to eat lunch with us, or like, I don't even remember. I'm losing track of promises that we made.
Maybe those people. Okay, well, how about this? You get those other ones that you just threw out there in the middle of recording, and I'll keep track of this one. So, $150 a month, you'll see Dan's face for a month on our YouTube page for each episode.
Wait, is this like a...
Not a whole month. No.
A live stream.
Yeah, I upgraded this when you were not paying attention to me.
Live
looking
stream.
At your phone. A month-long live stream of Dan's face. Watch him while he
Just
sleeps.
walking around with the camera. I'd be like I'm giving Shia LaBeouf a run for his money.
Yep.
Anyways.
I hope we have to follow through on that.
One thing I did want to mention in Blade Runner talk before we move on is, okay, this is the only main thing I wanted that I could think about that we didn't see in this version. So again, we watched the final cut.
Right.
And so apparently there's a bunch of different cuts, and I've watched one of the different ones before, but I don't remember what it was. Like there's like the regular cut, there's a director's cut. I want to say there's like an extended cut, and then there's like the final cut.
I know there's a lot.
Yeah, and the final cut is actually shorter than the regular cut by about 4 minutes. And
that was why we chose it.
Yeah, well, I also think though, like, so I guess what's going on there is like some scenes have been deleted and added and moved around. Or one thing I did read before we started this was like, for instance, that famous like dialogue at the end of the movie from the robot before he dies. Apparently one of the other cuts has a different version of that because it was like ad-libbed or something weird like that. Or maybe it was like something he was working on before shooting. I don't remember precisely it. But the main thing that I've heard implicated mainly by friends that love this movie and have seen it a bunch of times is I was talking to one of my friends about it, and I was saying like, yeah, there's like a funny like there's like this interesting fan theory in the book universe where they say like, what if Deckard, who's like the main character throughout the whole story, is actually an android himself? Like,
yeah. So, and I think I brought that up earlier. Like
my friend said that the movie apparently very strongly implicated that. And I was in the whatever version we watched tonight, there was none of that.
Yeah, I was always under the impression that was like a big question with this movie. And I remember after we had seen it, in high school, I never got that impression. And then I've been hearing that for a long time. And we were watching it tonight. I was like sort of looking forward to understanding that dynamic, and I didn't get that at all.
It would have even added more theme to the movie, like his struggle with doing this job would have been made more impactful if it was implicated, like, what if I'm this thing that I'm hunting down?
Yeah,
it adds
like
a
if he had
whole other
doubts.
dynamic that makes it interesting.
Right. So because in this cut, it was almost like there was almost no doubt, because they seem to make it very clear that they could only make them as well as they made the Nexus 6s, right?
Yeah.
So they all had that sort of problem where they didn't live very long.
Yeah.
So that almost makes it like, how could he have been one?
Yeah.
But I mean, they had all the other things like, they can implant memories and all of these things, which make it, where it could work.
Yeah.
And it would be kind of cool if he had all these self-doubts.
Right.
But they at least didn't give any indication that they thought that.
Yeah, not in the cut that we watched.
Now, another question I have was, what was with all the, like, unicorn dreams?
I have no idea. I don't know what that was.
What?
I guess it was just stock footage from Ridley Scott's first movie, Legend.
No, so actually, I'm literally just now putting something together that maybe doesn't make any sense. But he was sort of having these different little dreams, right?
Yeah.
The unicorn's the only one I remember, but I know that there was more than just that.
Mm-hmm.
But how there was the guy folding up the little paper origami animals all the time? Wasn't it at the very end? Wasn't it a unicorn?
I don't remember. It very well could have been.
I think it was a unicorn, and he kind of smiles.
But would have? Oh, maybe it's like a simulation.
Oh no, not that it's a simulation. That the implication might be that that guy was sort of telling him,
Gotcha.
I know your dreams that you're not telling anybody.
Gotcha. So that might have been one of the implications people were
Maybe
talking
that
about.
is, yeah.
But I also feel like that's not strong enough to where people argue. Like people like seem pretty clear like there was an
Well, but there might be a
implication
lot
of
more
it.
of little things like that we didn't pick up on.
Yeah, maybe. I
Now
just
I'm
feel
gonna read
like
about this
like-
after.
But I also kind of feel like the whole point of a alternative cut is and taking out scenes and adding some and it's still like a shorter length than the original. I feel like that could be because like maybe there's a version of the movie that stronger implies that maybe Ridley Scott didn't like.
Right.
And so this is his final cut that takes those elements out of it.
Yeah, for sure
'Cause-
that could be.
Because I remember we watched probably even a VHS maybe whenever we originally watched it.
Right. It was
And
probably
it was
DVD.
pre-Blu-ray, or it was right around when that was becoming big.
Oh, it was definitely
Yeah.
pre-Blu-ray.
Yeah, and so like whenever we watched it, it was more than likely the original cut of the movie.
Maybe.
so,
I
like-
don't know when these other cuts. I always assume those other cuts happened in the 80s.
Oh, I don't know.
I have no idea.
Yeah, it would be something worth looking into though.
Yeah, I'll probably read all about it after this.
Yeah, definitely.
So overall, I would say like I still feel similar about the movie as I did before, which is I can totally understand why people really like it. I'm not saying it's like a dumb movie that nobody should like,
Mhm.
but for whatever, well, not for whatever reasons, for the reasons that I kind of said here, I guess, it didn't necessarily work for me super well.
Yeah.
But the aesthetics and the effects definitely did work for me.
Yeah.
And I feel like I appreciate it a lot more watching it in higher quality than I did then. So definitely a movie worth watching. And I would say I'm still excited about
yeah,
seeing the next
seeing
one.
what a modern take on that world / sequel would be.
Yeah, with more Ryan Gosling.
Right, exactly. Right.
And that director is awesome.
Yeah,
Like-
we were just talking like he did what, Arrival?
He did Arrival and Sicario.
Yeah, which were great.
Yes. His name is
And-
Dennis, and there's no way I'm going to pronounce his last name right.
Devigny? It's French. That's typically
I know
what they do.
in my head it's Villanueva, but I know that's a different word and it's a whole different
with
thing.
French, I think you're better off just 9 times out of 10 ending with an U sound and you're
Yeah,
good.
Villanueva.
Yeah, if it's if it's spelled EAUX, it's U. So
Yeah. So Villanueva.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, nailed
You just got to own it. Like
Yeah.
like what is it in German, like the word for French is, it's like regular English, like it would be Französisch, but you'd be like Französisch, or like, well, that would be a little German. What? Let me think.
Man.
What's another? But there's one that's like a very like French. It's like clearly like because you go like in German, and it's like clearly like a French German cognate, and
you're doing like a German accent trying to speak French.
yeah,
but
and it's
in
really
American.
weird because you're doing German and then you suddenly have to break and switch to a French accent, and they're like, yeah, that's just how we say it.
Oh
and,
man.
yeah. So, but anyways, I don't even know. Oh yeah, Dennis.
Yeah.
So if he does a good job on this, I believe he's the one slated for Dune, which I keep bringing up to you because there has not been a proper. Well, the miniseries on Sci-Fi got pretty close in the late '90s, early 2000s, but the costuming left and production value left much to be desired.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
I would very
I
much.
think you got me to watch about 10 minutes of that.
Yeah. And you're like, nah, I can't do this. I have a different expectation when I go into a sci-fi thing.
You have a stronger appreciation for sci-fi and fantasy novels,
Yes.
and that I think translates to you like seeing those
Adapted.
interpreted as film, even if they're not
Yeah.
great films themselves. They're a like interesting way to visualize a thing that you already like.
The second one, that the sequel miniseries that they did to that one on Sci-Fi, which was called Children of Dune, that was based off the next two books, had a little Mr. Tumnus actor playing one of the main roles. What's his name?
Mr. Tumnus from Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah. What's his name? British actor, really famous.
Yeah, no,
Professor
I should
X.
know. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I can't believe we forgot his name, but yeah.
I can never remember his name, actually. People will say his name, and I'm always like, I should know who that is. And then they say who it is, and I'm like, I like that guy.
See, I recognize the name. I just always forget it. So
I mean,
once I
I
hear it,
literally
know
have a
exactly who it
computer
is.
in front of me. I could look it up.
James McAvoy.
There you go.
Yeah.
James McAvoy.
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 Yeah.
McAvoy.
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 McAvoy. So, yeah, that guy. Definitely not French.
Not French.
No, not French. That's how we say it here in the sticks. But yeah. So I say all that to say, like, that's William Hurt was in the main one, the one that we started watching.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it really is okay for the time that it was made. But we don't need to get on a Dune thing.
Yeah.
We don't need to do this.
I'm not dissing Dune here.
I know.
You get defensive about Dune.
You also couldn't get through
We
Joe
were
Dorosky's Dune, which is a documentary about a
Now,
Dune film that was never made.
Before you say couldn't get through, that is the wrong. We're talking about Joe Dorosky's Dune, which is
a documentary.
Award-winning
documentary.
Yeah, it's by the director of Drive, which
Yes.
I loved. And that was a super fascinating documentary. We had to stop, I believe, because you had to leave. And
No,
I have not had
it was,
the time
It was
to
because
watch it.
we were watching it while your child was still awake, and it was the middle of the day, and you were like, and there was some. He was
and it started
because
getting
he's
into some
crazy
weird...
French. He says some pretty off-color things.
Yeah.
And so we were like, hey, let's maybe not watch this right
Okay,
now.
you're right.
Which
So
makes sense.
it's not your fault
Right.
that we stopped it. The point is, we couldn't not get through it because I didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
But you left it at my house and it's been sitting in my drawer. But
Yeah.
I have a huge list of movies to watch whenever I both have a chance and am in the mood to watch a movie on my own. And so it's just not high on the list.
It's not high on the list, right?
But I did enjoy what I saw. So
yeah. So if any of you out there have not seen it, go rent, which you can get at your local video store if those exist anymore. But rent or order on digital copy, the old Joe Dorosky's Dune.
yeah,
It's
great.
a documentary. It actually is really cool because a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of those people left and like there's like 2 copies of the book that they made for that movie that never ended up getting made that they had started, and like a lot of that went out to major studios and it influenced, and a lot of those people went on to make Alien, Blade Runner, Star Wars. It influenced a lot of big like sci-fi.
Right.
Particularly, I think the Geiger stuff, like that's all, like you just look at it, it's like alien artwork and imagery.
Right.
Like just because he had that distinct style. Like there's a lot, like all kinds of crazy people attached and artists attached to that went on to do like amazing things.
And I think crazy people is an appropriate word. Not that they weren't talented,
right.
but I think to be on board with this guy,
Yeah.
you had to have an element of crazy.
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
he was nuts.
Right. It would be interesting. He really was ahead of his time in a sense that he was part of the reason why the movie got pulled was because he was wanting to make like this 13-hour movie.
Right.
And which just wasn't feasible back then. The budgetary issue.
Unlike now when 13-hour
Right,
movies
right.
are commonplace.
And not only that, like the shots he was wanting to do were truly like this would be amazing, but they just didn't. Like we barely have the technology to do that sort of thing now, and
Right.
even then it would have to all be digital, which they certainly didn't
he was
have back
describing like a
then.
shot
Opening
that
shot
opens in
going through
space.
the universe and gets smaller and smaller and smaller,
And it goes through space and it zooms in all the way onto
Yeah.
Earth. Yeah.
which is amazing. But it's just like, what is it? Tree of Life did something like that, showing like the span
Well, I feel
of
like
the
that's a
universe
pretty
and-
common thing now, but it almost is just
Yeah.
like, CG.
right.
We do that all the time.
Back then, it would have been visionary because,
Right,
like,
right.
what was that? Late '60s, something like that. Nothing like that would have. Like the closest you got to that was, I think, right before that, 2001 came out, Space Odyssey,
Right.
and so that would have been like the biggest like thing like that in that time. frame.
Yeah, I
But-
believe. I shouldn't talk about this. I haven't seen it in the like 30 minutes we saw of it.
Yeah.
Was a long time ago, but I believe he did reference 2001.
Oh yeah, probably.
So it was around that time.
Yeah, because some of the people they got to work on the visuals that eventually made the Alien movie, he found them because he couldn't get the person that he wanted from the studio, and so he said he literally went next door. This is Joe Dorosky. He went next door to like a local theater, and there was this like spoof movie of 2001: Space Odyssey that was playing called like I actually own it on DVD, and it's like. It's funny. Like I haven't seen it all the way through because I fell asleep because we were like watching it really late at night. But it was like really 60s and clearly making fun of 2001: Space Odyssey. But like I wish I knew what it's called. But anyways, he went and found that, and he's like, that's good enough for my movie. I'm going to hire these people to do my visual effects. And so that's what he did. Like, he was very like off the cuff and just eccentric and crazy, and just was like, you won't do it? Then you do it. Sir, you on the street. Can you run a camera? Come over here. Like that sort of thing. Enough about that, though.
Yeah, so next episode, probably, we will have seen the new Blade Runner
2049?
2048?
Yeah.
Something like that. 2048 makes more sense.
No,
right?
it's 2049.
Is it 2049?
Yes, it is.
Isn't 2048 is what 2 gigs is in megabytes, right?
I don't know what to tell you.
I could be wrong. Anyway, that's really unimportant. It's probably the same distance in time as the original to now or something.
And they not expect you to be someone into numerology or whatever.
Numerology?
Yeah.
That's technology. Okay. Gigabytes.
Yeah, but
megabytes.
as if it has some sort of significance.
Well, I mean, like...
it does. Robotics. I get
it. Robotics.
Yeah, technology, movie, space. Bits and bytes. I get it. So, next episode, like we said, will come, I think the next one scheduled, we will have seen Blade Runner 2049 by then.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have an episode kind of dedicated to that. I would imagine we'll have more than plenty to talk about that, a full episode. Obviously, if it's just a short thing and like we hated it or something like that, then we'll end up, we'll talk about it, but then we might have other stuff to talk about too. But that's the plan for next time, is to kind of have a Blade Runner centric episode, because we're really excited about that. And also, one thing I did want to mention before we talk about our normal outlets that you can find us on, we do have a Patreon account if anybody wants to support us that way. What are we still doing?
Yeah, like we established, if we can get to $150 a month by February of 2018, every episode for a month is going to include a stream of Dan's face.
I guess
I didn't specify Dan's face recording the episode. It might literally just be
a
your
picture
face.
of Dan. Yeah.
Well, not a picture. No. It has to be a stream. We'll do something.
Yeah, we'll figure out something.
Hopefully, this is a problem we have to solve.
Yeah. Hopefully.
I think that's a pretty far-reaching hope there.
But and then we also are on Facebook, Twitter, and the website. And you can find us like search terms, like keyword searching for our podcasts on all the different outlets that you can pretty much hear podcasts from. We're on there, and you can search that by searching A-Town FM and no slash, so just A-Town FM, all one word, and search that in there. Find us, subscribe, listen, tell your friends. Again, if anybody could leave us reviews on iTunes, that would be absolutely great, preferably good ones, but if there's bad ones, we'll try to figure out a way to game the system and delete them.
What I want is a bunch of reviews explaining how important the water tower of Arnold or your town is to your life. Tell us how much
water towers mean to you. Leave a review about it and just say, like, I'm glad, they touched on a big, important social issue.
We finally have a podcast dedicated to the things that matter in life.
Maybe you have someone named Noah in your life that is really just, like, causing you problems, and you're really glad that was brought up. All of these sorts of things, like, make sure that you mention these sorts of things in the review, in addition to how great the podcast is.
Yes, how amazing and good looking
the artwork is.
Exactly.